I went on a blind date with a beautiful cop, and we had a whirlwind wedding just a month later. On our wedding night, the very day the ceremony ended, she took a call from the station and left. At first, I was very understanding of her job. After all, it was a special line of work. But gradually, I found myself being neglected. In the 3 months since our wedding, we hadn't even been intimate. After one incident, my emotions completely erupted, and we had a massive fight. I asked for a divorce, but she was filled with regret. Ethan Miller stood at the entrance of the coffee shop, checking the address on his phone for the 3rd time. In his 26 years of life, Ethan had never imagined he would be forced into a blind date, especially since he wasn't hurting for money at all. He woke up naturally every day, played video games, or watched movies when he was bored, and occasionally met up with friends for a drink. Life couldn't be more relaxed. Just then, his phone buzzed, his mother's name flashing on the screen. "Hello, Ethan, are you there yet? Officer Davis is very particular about punctuality. You can't keep her waiting." I'm here, right at the door," Ethan replied, exasperated. "Mom, I really don't get why you're in such a rush. I'm only 26, I've got a car, a house, and money in the bank. What kind of girl couldn't I find?" "Cut the crap," his mother's voice shot up. "Is it such a hardship for you to go on one blind date?" Officer Davis was introduced by Mrs. Peterson. She's a real detective with the Lakeside City Police Department, a stable job, a reliable person. Besides, you're 26, and you've never even had a serious relationship. All you do at home is eat and sleep. What kind of way is that to live? This time, Ethan got the message. She probably wanted to find him a strict wife to keep him in line. Okay, I get it. Say no more. I'm going in to talk to her now." After hanging up, Ethan sighed and pushed open the glass door of the coffee shop. The early March air was still chilly, but inside the cafe, it was as warm as spring. He scanned the room, his eyes quickly landing on a figure seated by the window. Chloe had texted Ethan her table number beforehand, so he spotted her immediately. It wasn't because of any stunning beauty, but rather a unique presence she had. She wore a blue turtleneck sweater and a long white skirt, her hair pulled back in a neat, short ponytail. "Hello? Are you Chloe Davis?" Ethan asked gently as he approached the table. The woman looked up. It was only then that Ethan got a clear look at her. She had fair skin, delicate features, and light makeup, but her eyes were exceptionally bright and sharp, as if they could see right through you. "Ethan Miller?" Her voice was more pleasant than he'd imagined, though it had a businesslike edge. "Have a seat." Ethan pulled out a chair and sat, his eyes falling on the half-empty Americano in front of her. "Looks like she got here early," Ethan thought to himself. "Order whatever you want," Chloe said, sliding the menu across the table with a brisk, efficient motion. "I have a 30-minute break." Ethan took the menu and ordered a latte with extra sugar. Seeing that the pleasantries were over, Chloe began to speak. "I'll get straight to the point. I've already gotten the basics about you from Mrs. Peterson. You have a communications degree, caught the wave of e-commerce live streaming while you were still in school, and made a fortune, started a media company after graduating, sold it 3 years later, and are now in a state of semi-retirement. Is there anything you want to know about me?" No, which wasn't strictly true. It was more that Ethan just didn't care about this whole blind date. "Then I'll tell you a bit about myself," Chloe said, launching into her own introduction. "I'm the deputy captain of the LCPD's detective division. I live in department housing, and I don't own a car. I'm usually focused on work, so I don't really have any hobbies." Ethan gave a slight nod after she finished. "Yeah, that's nice." A short silence fell between them. Ethan took his coffee from the waitress, wondering how to proceed with this clearly awkward date. To his surprise, Chloe was the one to speak first. "I think you're pretty decent. We could try seeing each other." Ethan was floored. He hadn't said a thing. So how could she have decided he was decent? "Am I really that great?" Ethan asked. "Yes, you are. Blind dates are simple. If it seems okay, you give it a shot. If not, you end it quickly," Chloe said, taking a sip of her coffee. She set down her cup and asked, "So what do you think of me?" "You're pretty great, too." Ethan managed to stammer out a neutral assessment. "Then let's try seeing each other for a while," Chloe said. "Oh, okay." For some reason Ethan couldn't explain, he found himself agreeing. He had no idea what would happen just 1 month later. A month later, Ethan and Chloe were standing in the photo booth at City Hall. "Okay, you two, move a little closer together." At the instruction, Ethan and Chloe shuffled closer. Over the past month, they had seen each other a total of 8 times. 3 of those times, Chloe came over to Ethan's place for dinner. Twice, Ethan went to her apartment for dinner. Twice, Ethan brought her a late-night meal at the police station. And once, they went to see a movie together. Getting their marriage license was the 9th time they had ever met. Today, Chloe was in her dress uniform, and Ethan had put on a custom-tailored suit he'd bought back when he was working. "Come on, smile. This is your big day. Look happy," the middle-aged photographer instructed. A little while later, they walked out of City Hall, holding their brand new marriage certificate. "Just like that, we're married?" Ethan murmured, looking at the certificate in his hand, the whole thing feeling surreal. Chloe tucked the certificate into her purse. "What's wrong? Having second thoughts?" "No, not that," Ethan said, scratching his head. "It just feels so fast." "It's okay," Chloe said, linking her arm through his. "We can take our time now that we're married." Ethan was clearly uncomfortable. After all, he was marrying a woman he'd known for less than 2 months. Chloe suddenly reached out and straightened his collar, an intimate gesture that made Ethan freeze. "It's okay. I really like you. I wouldn't have married you otherwise." This was the first time Chloe had ever told Ethan that she liked him. A warmth spread through Ethan's chest, and he was just about to say something in return. Suddenly, Chloe's phone rang. She answered, her expression instantly turning serious. "Okay, I'm on my way." "A case?" Ethan asked, already accustomed to these sudden interruptions. In the month they'd been together, Chloe had bailed on him like this more than once. The one time they'd managed to see a movie was only because she'd just closed a case and had half a day off. Chloe nodded. "Yeah, a serial burglary case. They found a new lead." She paused for a moment, then added, "Why don't you head home first? I'll come back when I'm finished." "All right," Ethan agreed. The home Chloe was talking about was a newly renovated house they had bought together to be their marital home. A flash of guilt crossed Chloe's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by her professional calm. "I'll drive you." "Okay." The wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks later, a small, intimate ceremony with only close friends and family invited. On the wedding day, Chloe wore formal makeup for a change. She looked beautiful and sharp in a simple white wedding dress. Ethan was dressed to the nines in a suit, looking much more formal than his usual self. Guided by the officiant, they completed the ceremony and accepted the well wishes of their loved ones. Chloe maintained a perfect smile throughout the entire event, and while Ethan felt a bit awkward, he played his part and got through the wedding cooperatively. At 10 o'clock that night, with everything finally done, the two of them returned home. The moment they walked in the door, Chloe kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the sofa. So tired. Ethan loosened his tie and handed her a glass of water with a smile. "You must be exhausted." Chloe took the glass, their fingers brushing for a moment. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes holding a softness he had never seen before. "Thank you. We're married now. You don't have to thank me." "It's my pleasure," Ethan said, tentatively sitting down beside her. Chloe didn't pull away, and the room suddenly grew quiet. Ethan slowly reached out, wrapped an arm around her waist, and pulled her closer. Chloe leaned into him, slowly closing her eyes. He lowered his head, about to press his lips to hers. Chloe's phone suddenly rang. Her eyes snapped open, and she grabbed it to answer the call. "Hello? What's up?" Ethan saw her expression turn serious in an instant and knew their night was over. "Okay, I'm on my way." Chloe hung up and shot Ethan an apologetic glance. "There's been a homicide on the south side. I have to go into the station." "So?" Ethan tried to hide his disappointment. "It's fine. I'll drive you." "No, don't worry about it. I'll grab a cab. The department will cover it." "You're exhausted too," Chloe said, already heading for the door. "Are you sure you don't want me to drive you?" "I'm sure. You just stay here and get some rest." Chloe had already slipped on her sneakers and opened the door. "I'm sorry. Don't wait up for me tonight. Just go to sleep." And with that, she was gone, not even giving Ethan a chance to respond. Ethan washed up and sat on the sofa to wait for her, eventually drifting off to sleep. And that was how their wedding night ended. The next morning, Ethan was woken by the sound of Chloe unlocking the door. "You're back?" Ethan asked, sitting up groggily and looking toward Chloe in the entryway. Chloe looked up at Ethan, her face pale and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes. "Yeah," she said, her voice quiet and heavy with exhaustion. "We were up all night, but we finally caught the suspect." Chloe walked over to the sofa and immediately lay down. "So tired. I'm just going to sleep for a little while." Before she could even finish the sentence, her eyes were closed, and her breathing evened out. Ethan sat on the other end of the couch, watching his new wife, and couldn't help but sigh. He carefully took off her jacket and shoes, then gently wiped her face and hands with a damp cloth. After he was done, Ethan got a blanket from the bedroom and draped it over her. "It feels like we're not even married," he thought to himself. Today marked 3 months and 7 days of their marriage, and Ethan was lying on the sofa, watching some mindless TV show. Rain trickled down the window pane, and he couldn't remember how many days in a row Chloe had been away from home. Was it 7 days or 8? Ethan hadn't bothered to keep track. What was the point of counting anyway? She still wasn't coming home. Ethan rolled over and stretched, just as he heard the sound of the lock turning in the door. Chloe was home. Ethan slipped on his slippers and walked to the entryway. "You're back." "Yeah," Chloe answered, her voice listless. "I'm going to shower first. I've been at the station for days and I feel disgusting." "Okay." A little later, the water shut off and the bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam that smelled of her body wash. Chloe walked out, toweling her hair dry, wearing a white silk nightgown. "Honey, can you dry my hair for me?" Ethan turned off the TV and went into the bedroom, sitting on the bed to dry her hair. The scent of her hair, a mix of shampoo and her own natural fragrance, drifted up to him. Ethan couldn't tell if it was her shampoo or just her. Chloe sat nestled between his legs, texting a colleague from the station about a case. After her hair was dry, Chloe lay down with her back to him. Ethan turned off the light and wrapped his arms around her from behind. Chloe didn't resist, instead turning over to kiss him. When they broke the kiss, Chloe suddenly spoke. "The suspect confessed, so the department gave me 2 days off. So tonight." "Really?" Ethan asked, surprised. It was the longest break she'd had since they were married. "Really?" Chloe confirmed. Ethan's breath hitched. For 3 months, the most intimate they had been was the occasional hug and a few shallow kisses. Every time he tried to take things further, Chloe would always turn him down, saying she was too tired or didn't have time. Eventually, he stopped trying. "Is this okay?" Ethan whispered, his hands cautiously trailing down from her waist. Chloe didn't answer. She just kissed him again. This kiss was more passionate than any they had shared before. Just as Ethan moved on top of her, the moment was shattered by the shrill ring of her phone. Chloe's body tensed, and Ethan, out of habit, rolled off her so she could answer it. "Hello," she answered, her voice already back to its professional calm, though her breathing was still a little ragged. Ethan lay flat on his back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was coming next. "Okay, no problem. I'll be right there. It's fine, no trouble at all." After hanging up, Chloe gave Ethan a quick peck on the cheek. "I'm so sorry. Captain Thompson said the suspect has an accomplice. I have to go in, but it won't take long. I'll be back soon." "It's fine." Assured of his understanding, Chloe quickly got out of bed to change. Then came the sound of the front door opening and closing, and she was gone again. Ethan lay alone in bed, the sheets still warm from her body and smelling faintly of her body wash. He stared at the ceiling, an immense wave of exhaustion washing over him. This time, he didn't even feel disappointed, just numb. He waited and waited, until 2 in the morning, but Chloe still wasn't back. Not a single call, not one text. Outside, the world was dark and the rain had stopped. The house felt terrifyingly quiet to Ethan. He grabbed a jacket and decided to go out for a walk. A late-night food cart on the street was still lit, its owner clearing away leftover skewers and beer bottles from the last customers. Ethan ordered 2 beers and some food, sitting on a plastic stool and drinking slowly. He drank one beer after another, the cold liquid doing nothing to cool the frustration burning in his chest. He thought back to the wedding 3 months ago, to the envious looks from his friends. "You're a lucky guy, marrying a beautiful cop like her." They just didn't know how hollow their marriage really was. They lived under the same roof, but they were more like roommates than a married couple. Chloe's life was consumed by cases, clues, and suspects, leaving nothing for him but her exhausted back and rushed apologies. He lost track of time, until he saw the owner of a breakfast spot starting to set up for the morning. The owner of the late-night cart was packing up. He paid his bill, grabbed his jacket, and headed home. The house was still empty. The moment Ethan walked in, he kicked off his shoes and passed out on the sofa. He woke up again at 2 in the afternoon. Chloe still wasn't home. He checked his phone. No calls, just 2 cursory iMessages. "Sorry. New development in the case. Can't come home tonight." They were sent at 6 in the morning. Ethan tossed his phone aside, rubbed his stiff neck, and decided to go indulge a new hobby he'd picked up since getting married. Ethan drove out to the Crestwood River on the edge of town and got the fishing gear he'd bought 2 months ago from his trunk. He found a good spot, set up his folding chair, and started putting his rod together. Just as he was about to cast his line, a familiar voice came from behind him. "You can't fish here." Ethan froze and slowly turned around. Chloe was standing a few feet away, in uniform, her expression cold. The dark circles under her eyes made it clear she hadn't slept at all. "What are you doing here?" Chloe asked first. She took a few steps closer, noticing his full set of fishing gear. "And when did you get into fishing?" Ethan found it laughable. He'd bought all this gear a month after their wedding. It was one thing for her not to care, but she didn't even know he owned any of it. "Am I not allowed to be here?" he asked, trying to keep his anger in check. But Chloe could still hear the sharp edge in his voice. "We're in the middle of an investigation," Chloe said officially. "I need you to cooperate." 3 months of frustration suddenly boiled over. Ethan stood up, looking her straight in the eye. "You want me to cooperate? I've done nothing but cooperate for 3 months. Chloe's expression faltered for a second before hardening again. "I'm on the job, Ethan. Don't cause a scene." "A scene?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "I've been ignored at home for 3 months. I just wanted to come out and do some fishing. How is that causing a scene?" Chloe felt a surge of indignation. Her own husband had no appreciation for her work and was now attacking her for it. "Can't you be more understanding of my job?" she shot back, her own voice rising. "Understanding?" Ethan felt a sting of pain at her words. "You left on our wedding night for a case. We haven't had a normal married life in 3 months, and every single plan we make gets cut short by a call from work. How much more understanding do you want me to be?" Chloe's face went pale. "Do you really have to bring this up here? Then where should we talk? At home? Have you spent one single, complete day at home since we got married?" Ethan's voice started to shake. The other officers nearby stopped what they were doing, staring at the feuding couple. "This is your last warning," she said in a low voice. "Leave now, and don't argue with me." Ethan ignored her completely, gripping his rod and casting his line out over the water. Chloe's breathing quickened. She pulled a pair of handcuffs from her pocket, grabbed Ethan's hands, and cuffed them. A few of her fellow officers saw what was happening and rushed over. "Davis, come on, don't do this. Yeah, this isn't going to be good for your marriage." But Chloe was furious and deaf to their pleas. Ethan remained silent, his expression cold, refusing to even look at Chloe. In a holding cell at the station, Ethan lay on a cold, hard bench. The handcuffs were off, but the red marks on his wrists were a stark reminder of what Chloe had just done. She had arrested him, right there by the river, in front of all her colleagues. He heard footsteps outside the cell, then the serious voice of a man. "That was reckless, Chloe. He's your husband, not some dangerous felon." Ethan recognized the voice. It was Captain Thompson, the head of the detective division. He was refusing to cooperate, Chloe argued, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "We searched the entire riverbank and found nothing. It wasn't the crime scene." Captain Thompson sighed. "Go let him out. Talk to him, apologize. Marriage isn't a game." The footsteps grew closer, and the cell door swung open. Chloe stood in the doorway, her uniform wrinkled and disheveled. "You can go," she said quietly. Ethan got to his feet and walked silently toward the door, brushing past Chloe without a glance. In the station lobby, several officers pretended to be busy, but they were all sneaking glances at the couple. Ethan collected his personal belongings, including his fishing gear. Chloe followed behind him, stammering, unsure of what to say. "Ethan, let's get a divorce," Ethan said suddenly. His voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet lobby, everyone heard it. Chloe froze, her mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. "Don't be rash," Captain Thompson said, quickly stepping in. "It's normal for couples to fight. Just go home and cool off." "Yeah," another female officer added. "Captain Davis has a stressful job. You should try to be more understanding." Ethan looked at her colleagues, all defending her, and found the situation utterly ridiculous. What did they know? Did they know what it felt like to spend your wedding night alone? Did they know what it was like to be ignored for 3 months straight? Did they know the heart-shattering feeling of having your own wife put you in handcuffs? Chloe stepped forward and grabbed Ethan's arm, her face as white as a sheet. "Ethan, Ethan pulled his arm free and finished gathering his things. "Don't. I'm tired. I'll have the divorce papers drawn up." With that, he walked out of the police station without looking back. Chloe just stood there, watching him walk away until he was out of sight. In the private booth at the gaming cafe, the curtains were drawn so tightly you couldn't tell if it was day or night. Ethan rubbed his aching eyes as his character died again on screen. He glanced at the time in the corner. 5:32 a.m. It was his 14th day holed up in a booth at the StarCraft gaming cafe. Ethan stretched, his spine popping satisfyingly. He checked his phone. No messages, no calls, nothing from Chloe. He ordered food when he was hungry and slept on the small sofa when he was tired. When he needed a shower, he used the one in the employee break room. The owner, Mr. Wallace, knew him and didn't mind. This kind of life was actually pretty great. There was a soft knock on the door, and Mr. Wallace, the owner, poked his head in. "Hey Ethan, just wanted to let you know, we're starting renovations this afternoon, so we'll be closed for a few days." Ethan finally tore his eyes away from the screen. "All right, I'll pack my stuff." By noon, the cafe was empty. Ethan went to the restroom to wash his face. Staring into the mirror, he barely recognized himself. His hair was a mess, and he had huge dark circles under his eyes. His stubble had grown into a scruffy beard. Ethan packed his bag and left his sanctuary. People hurried past him on the street, paying no mind to the disheveled young man. Ethan wandered the streets aimlessly. He didn't want to go home, so he planned to find another gaming cafe to crash at. Before he knew it, he found himself in front of a place called Pleasurefoot Spa. Ethan stopped. After 2 weeks in the cafe, his whole body ached. A foot massage sounded pretty good. Plus, they offered overnight rooms, so he could crash there for a day. "How many in your party, sir?" the receptionist asked cheerfully. "Just one," Ethan said, glancing at the menu and randomly picking the most expensive package. The receptionist smiled at his choice, but said nothing. She led him to a private room, where Ethan lay down on the massage table. A moment later, the door opened softly, and a young woman in a revealing dress entered. "Hello, sir. I'm Mandy, your technician," a sickly sweet voice purred next to his ear. "Let's get started," Ethan said, closing his eyes to enjoy the massage. The masseuse's hands were soft. She started by washing his feet, then began massaging his calves. Ethan gradually relaxed, the exhaustion of the past 2 weeks slowly melting away. But halfway through the massage, he felt something was off. The masseuse pressed her body closer and closer, her soft chest brushing against his leg, seemingly on purpose. Ethan shot up. "What are you doing?" The masseuse gave him a sultry smile. "You don't like this? I understand." As she spoke, she unzipped her dress, letting it fall to the floor until she was standing completely naked in front of him. It was then that Ethan realized this was one of those places. "Put your clothes back on. I just want a massage, nothing else." Just then, the door to the room was kicked open, and several police officers stormed in. "Police. Vice raid. Don't move." Ethan's mind went completely blank. The masseuse, clearly experienced in this, immediately dropped to the floor with her hands on her head. In this situation, he was caught red-handed. There was no explaining his way out of this. "Hands on your head. Get down," an officer yelled. Unable to argue, Ethan did as he was told, and was herded to the police station with a group of other Johns and sex workers. The station was chaotic. The vice raid had rounded up a lot of people. Ethan squatted in a corner with the other suspected Johns, waiting to be questioned. "Name?" an officer asked, starting the booking process. "Ethan Miller. Age? 27. Occupation? Unemployed." The officer glanced up at him, this disheveled young man fitting the usual profile perfectly. "What were you doing there?" "Getting a foot massage." "Tell the truth. It really was just a foot massage. It'll be easier for you if you confess." Ethan was at a loss for words. He told them the truth, and they wouldn't believe him. They just wanted him to confess to soliciting a prostitute. Just then, the interrogation room door opened. Ethan looked up and froze. She was the last person on earth he wanted to see right now. "Chloe, did you really solicit a prostitute?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No, I didn't," Ethan said, looking at her with exasperation. "I was just getting a foot massage. I had no idea the woman was just going to start taking off her clothes." "So now you're making excuses?" Chloe's voice rose sharply. "Is it because we haven't been intimate? Are you that desperate? Would you sleep with just any woman you find?" Her words were like a barrage of accusations, one after another. Her words cut him like a knife, and Ethan, who was already on edge, finally snapped. His emotions completely spiraled out of control. "I told you, I didn't solicit a damn prostitute." His roar echoed through the quiet interrogation room like a thunderclap. Everyone in the vicinity turned to stare at them. "Then what were you doing there?" Chloe pressed, unrelenting. A few officers who knew about their relationship rushed over to separate them. "All right, that's enough. Break it up. Let's not do this here." Chloe was pulled aside by her colleagues, her chest heaving, tears welling in her eyes. A few other officers guided Ethan to a chair. "Okay, Captain, let's just investigate first. It's possible he wasn't there for that." Chloe took a deep breath, fighting back tears. Her colleagues helped her out of the interrogation room, her steps unsteady. Ethan watched her leave, a profound sense of weariness washing over him. What was even left of their marriage? It seemed like there was nothing left but mutual pain. The questioning went on for hours. The police checked the spa's security footage and took the masseuse's statement, both of which confirmed that Ethan had not solicited any illegal services. Ethan walked out of the interrogation room, his face expressionless. He saw Chloe sitting on a bench near the exit, apparently waiting for him. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. "I'm sorry, I was out of line earlier," Chloe said softly. Ethan walked right past her without a glance. "Ethan," Chloe called, catching up to him. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about. It's over," Ethan said without turning around. "Because of this one misunderstanding?" Chloe's voice cracked. "I already apologized." Ethan stopped and turned to face her, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. A misunderstanding? You think this is just about what happened tonight? Our marriage has been over for a long time. It was over the moment you chose your job over me, over and over again. I hope you'll sign the divorce papers soon, so we can both move on. And with that, he walked out the doors of the police station. He could hear Chloe calling his name behind him, but he didn't look back. That night, Ethan found another gaming cafe to crash in. His character on screen died over and over, but he felt nothing. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Ethan pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was Chloe. Without hesitating, he declined the call. Less than 10 seconds later, it buzzed again. Ethan declined it again, then blocked her number. A little while later, his phone rang again. It was an unknown number. Ethan decided to answer it. Ethan, I. The voice was familiar, yet distant. Ethan hung up immediately and blocked that number too. In his office at the LCPD, Captain Thompson slid a leave approval form across his desk to Chloe. I've approved you for 2 weeks of leave. Go sort things out with your husband. Don't worry about anything here. Chloe's hand trembled as she took the form. Okay. The house was dark and cold, completely empty. Chloe walked through the rooms. She hadn't been back since her fight with Ethan by the river, staying away out of spite. A thin layer of dust covered the tables and windowsills, a clear sign that Ethan hadn't been back in the last 2 weeks either. She sank onto the sofa, her eyes landing on a document sitting on the coffee table. She picked it up, and her breath caught in her throat. Divorce agreement was printed in large letters across the top. Her hands shook as she opened it. Ethan had already signed his name. The date was from 13 days ago, the day after she had arrested him. She never thought he was serious. He really wanted to divorce her. Only one thought consumed Chloe's mind. She had to find Ethan, whether it was to finalize the divorce or to try and fix things. But when she tried to think of where to even start looking for him, she drew a complete blank. In their 3 months of marriage, she realized she had never really taken the time to get to know him. She didn't know his friends, his hobbies, or even what he did with his time at home. So he didn't want a divorce on a whim, she realized. It was the result of one disappointment after another. A sudden idea struck her. She grabbed her car keys and ran out the door. Half an hour later, she was at Ethan's parents' house. She stood at their front door, hesitating for a moment before ringing the bell. Ethan's mother opened the door and was visibly surprised to see Chloe. Chloe, what are you doing here at this hour? Please, come in. Mrs. Miller, is Ethan here? Chloe asked directly, her voice tight with anxiety. No, he's not, his mother replied, confused. What's wrong? Did you two have a fight? Chloe bit her lip. It seemed Ethan hadn't told his parents about the divorce yet. She nodded, deciding it was best not to tell them either. Yes, we had a fight. He hasn't been home in 2 weeks. The color drained from Mrs. Miller's face as she quickly pulled Chloe inside. Ethan's father came out of his study, and his wife quickly explained the situation. He then turned to Chloe and asked what had happened between them. Chloe looked down at the floor, not knowing where to begin. Should she tell them how she always put her job first? Or that she had arrested her own husband? Or that after 3 months of marriage, they still hadn't been intimate? Every detail was humiliating. I'm so sorry. Chloe broke down crying, her words coming out in choked sobs. Mrs. Miller pulled her into a hug, patting her back comfortingly. Seeing the state she was in, Ethan's father decided to call his son and get to the bottom of it. The call connected almost immediately, and Mr. Miller put it on speaker so both women could hear. What's up, Dad? Where are you? Chloe is here. She says you haven't been home in 2 weeks. Is she there with you? Ethan asked, getting straight to the point. Mr. Miller glanced at Chloe before continuing. Yes, and you should see the state she's in. What happened between you two? There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Ethan sighed. It's nothing. I just want a divorce. What? Both of his parents were stunned. They never imagined Ethan would want a divorce. His mother grabbed the phone. What's wrong, son? Why would you want a divorce? Everything seemed fine. Ethan didn't want to explain it to his parents. He knew they would always push for reconciliation. Even if he explained how neglected he felt, it wouldn't do any good. Since it wasn't a matter of infidelity or something similar, they would just say things like, things will get better over time. Every marriage has its struggles. You shouldn't just throw the word divorce around. It's like saying a difficult person just needs a patient partner. But that just means the patient one has to suffer. I just want a divorce. There's nothing else to it. His mother knew Ethan was a good, gentle person who always listened to them. For him to say something like that, she knew something serious must have happened. He wouldn't bring up divorce lightly. Where are you right now? You need to come home. Chloe is here, and you two need to talk this out. There's nothing to talk about. Just tell her to sign the papers. Ethan, his father cut in. Marriage isn't a game you can just quit when you feel like it. Ethan gave a cold laugh. In his eyes, that's exactly what this marriage felt like, a game. He decided he didn't care anymore, and quickly summarized the past 3 months of neglect. He told them about her leaving on their wedding night, about her arresting him by the river, and about her accusing him of cheating based on nothing but suspicion. In response, his parents just said that Chloe's job was demanding. She was a cop, so of course her work had to come first. As for the other 2 incidents, they said Chloe knew she was wrong and that she should apologize. They could argue about it, but it wasn't a reason for divorce. Then, Ethan said, "We still haven't slept together." What? His parents were stunned into silence. Chloe looked away, unable to meet their eyes. The 2 of them looked at Chloe, their unspoken question hanging in the air. Chloe nodded. "Yes, we haven't." Mrs. Miller's jaw dropped, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Mr. Miller remained silent, watching to see how the 2 women would handle the situation. After all, it wasn't his place to comment, especially with Ethan not being there. Chloe tried to explain. "I'm usually not home, and when I am, I'm just so tired. Anyway, it's all my fault. It has nothing to do with him." Mrs. Miller composed herself and spoke to Ethan again. "Son, that's something that can be, well, it can be fixed." She trailed off, still shocked by the revelation. But in any case, that's not a reason to get divorced. These things happen with married couples. Ethan knew this was how they'd react, but that wasn't the reason he wanted a divorce. It was just that his parents' generation couldn't understand modern relationships. "Let's just end it. I'm tired. I don't want to be with her anymore." Chloe, now desperate, quickly wiped away her tears. "Ethan, I know I was wrong. Please, let's not get a divorce. I'll do better, I promise. I have 2 weeks off from work. We could go on a trip, just the 2 of us." Her voice trailed off as large tears streamed down her face. Ethan scoffed. "It's pointless. It's over." Then he hung up. After he hung up, Chloe completely broke down. She stumbled to her feet. "I'm so sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, for bothering you," she said, getting ready to leave. Seeing her state, Mrs. Miller quickly stopped her. "It's so late. Don't go home. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, his father and I will go find Ethan and drag him back here." But Chloe knew that even if they managed to drag him back, it would just be humiliating for her. This was something they had to solve on their own. "It's okay, Mrs. Miller. I should go." Mrs. Miller tried to get her to stay, but Chloe was insistent, and she couldn't be stopped. Chloe sat in her car, but she didn't start the engine. She had no idea where to go, or what she could possibly do to save her failing marriage. All she could do was let her tears fall, one by one, onto the steering wheel. Ethan stayed at the gaming cafe for another 2 weeks. He knew Chloe's leave must be over by now, and she'd be back at work. He packed his few belongings and left the cafe. He planned to go back to the house to see if she had signed the divorce papers. If she hadn't, he'd print out another copy, and another, until she did. Ethan didn't want to see Chloe again, much less have another conversation with her. The taxi dropped him off at the entrance to their apartment complex, and Ethan walked slowly toward the familiar building. In the elevator, he caught his reflection in the polished metal walls. His hair was a mess, his eyes were sunken, and his clothes were wrinkled. He looked nothing like the happy, energetic groom he'd been just a few months ago. He opened the door and immediately saw a familiar figure curled up on the sofa. Chloe must have heard the door open. She quickly sat up. Ethan froze in the doorway. He hadn't expected her to be here, but he quickly composed himself. He was here to get a divorce, after all. When Chloe saw it was him, she scrambled up, not even bothering to put on her shoes. She ran to him barefoot and threw her arms around him. "Ethan, I was wrong. Please, can we not get a divorce?" Her voice was hoarse and her eyes were red. It was clear she'd been crying for a long time. Ethan tried to push her away. "Let go of me. We're over." But Chloe held on tighter, pulling down the strap of her top to expose her pale shoulder. She took his hand and pressed it against her chest. "Can we sleep together now? Let's have a baby, okay?" Ethan pulled his hand back as if he'd been shocked. The whole situation was just too bizarre. The always prim and proper Officer Davis was now a disheveled mess, crying and begging him to sleep with her like a desperate, crazy person. "Get dressed," he said softly. Tears streamed down Chloe's face. "I don't want to. I don't want a divorce. I can transfer to another department. I can be a patrol officer or do desk work. I'll even quit." She was so choked with sobs, she could hardly get the words out. "Just forget it. You're good at your job. If you give up your career just to save our marriage, you'll end up hating me for it." Ethan said, "I don't care about any of that. I just want you." Chloe sobbed, soaking the front of his shirt with her tears. "Stop it. We're not right for each other. I'll print out another copy of the divorce papers. You can have the house. Consider it compensation." Ethan turned to leave, but Chloe wrapped her arms around him from behind, holding on tight. "I don't want it. You can't go," she screamed, her voice rising hysterically. "I'll really change, I swear. The department gave me 6 months of leave. Can you just give me 6 months? Let me prove it to you. Chloe had run out of options. All she could do was beg Ethan for one more chance. 6 months. Ethan scoffed. And then what? We go right back to how things were. It's pointless. You're a great cop, Chloe, but you're not cut out to be a wife. Ethan pried her arms off him and walked out the door. Ethan disappeared again, leaving Chloe with no choice but to go to her parents' house. People often seek help when they feel helpless, and Chloe was no exception. Her mother opened the door, still in her apron, and was visibly taken aback to see her daughter standing there. Why the sudden visit? You didn't even call. She peered behind Chloe. Where's Ethan? Didn't he come with you? He's not here, Chloe said quietly, trying to keep her emotions in check. Her father was at the dining table, and he too looked surprised to see her. What's wrong? Didn't Ethan come with you? Chloe sat down at the table as her mother brought her a plate of food. She took a deep breath. Dad, Mom, Ethan wants a divorce. The dining room fell silent. Her parents were stunned. What happened? You've been married less than 4 months. Her father was the first to speak. Chloe bit her lip and told them everything that had happened over the past few months. Her parents' expressions shifted from concern to shock, and finally to a complex mixture of emotions that was hard to read. Her mother opened her mouth to speak, but seemed at a loss for words. Her father had come up through the ranks as a detective himself. He knew all too well the strain the job put on a family. But he never imagined his own daughter would let the job consume her to the point of completely neglecting her family. Her father looked like he wanted to say something, but he held his tongue. After all, a lecture wouldn't help. Sometimes you have to lose something to understand its value. So where is he now? Her father asked. Chloe shook her head. I don't know. Oh, Chloe. Her father sighed, angry that his daughter had let her marriage fall into such a state. She had no idea how to balance her work and her personal life. Her mother looked at her with concern. Chloe, honey, you were in the wrong. You can't treat your husband that way. Ethan is a good man. If you apologize and spend more time with him, I'm sure you can work things out. You've built a bond as husband and wife. Mom, Chloe's voice trembled. We actually haven't. Her parents had the same reaction as Ethan's. They were in complete disbelief. Her father's mind reeled. He couldn't believe his own daughter could be so neglectful of her marriage that they hadn't even had a normal physical relationship. You deserve it, he finally said. I know I was wrong, Chloe said helplessly, tears dripping onto her shirt. Her father said with a look of resignation, no matter what, you have to make time for your life, for your marriage, for your family. I remember the night you were born. I was on a very important stakeout. I was completely out of contact, not a single call or message. I'd even lost track of how far along your mother was. It wasn't until days after you were born that I finally rushed to the hospital. That's when I found out your mother's water had broken early, you were breech, and she almost died on the operating table. We almost lost you both. After that, your mother had terrible postpartum depression. It took a very long time for her to get better. Chloe looked at her parents. She had never heard this story before. You have to value more than just your job. You have to value your life, and everything in it that matters to you. So, no matter how important your job is, you have to save some energy for your family, even if it's just a little. Meanwhile, Ethan was on a beach in Florida, enjoying the ocean breeze. It was his 3rd month away from home, and his 7th day in this seaside city. Ethan had always wanted to travel the country, but he kept putting it off, always waiting for the right time. He had hoped to travel with Chloe after they got married. But that dream had vanished, their marriage ending almost before it began. Sunbathing by yourself again? A gentle female voice asked from behind him. Ethan lowered his sunglasses to see who it was. It was Jessica Carter. She was 28, a travel blogger Ethan had met in Springfield a month ago. They had been traveling together for a while now. The sun's about to set. Come on, let's go get some dinner, Jessica said, squeezing in next to him on his lounge chair without a second thought. Ethan subtly shifted away from her and stood up. Okay. Jessica had arranged a dinner with a few other travel bloggers who were in town. At the dinner, several people who knew Ethan and Jessica made jokes about the two of them being a couple. They teased them about when they were going to make it official. Ethan and Jessica just laughed along without confirming or denying anything. After dinner was over, Ethan walked a drunk Jessica back to her hotel. As they were waiting for a cab by the side of the road, Jessica, who had been leaning on his shoulder, suddenly stood up straight, her eyes surprisingly clear. Jessica, you're not drunk? Nope. It takes more than that to get me drunk. My tolerance is better than that. She shook her head, as if to clear the last of the alcoholic haze. Come on, walk with me for a bit. Okay. The November nights in Florida were still warm. They strolled along the boardwalk, listening to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. They walked in comfortable silence. Suddenly, Jessica stopped walking. What do you think of me? Huh? Ethan was a little taken aback, but decided to give an honest answer. You're great. You're kind, fun, beautiful, and you're a very caring person. Is that really how you see me? Jessica asked with a sad smile. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Ethan could guess where this was going and decided to be direct. Jessica suddenly turned to face him, looking him straight in the eye. Her eyes were full of hope and tenderness, but there was also a hint of sadness in them. The truth is, I really like you, Ethan, Jessica said. Her voice was quiet but clear, and Ethan heard every word. But Ethan wasn't ready to accept her feelings, and not just because of his own impending divorce. He just wasn't ready to jump into a new relationship so soon. The thing is, I'm married, Jessica said, cutting him off. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. What? My husband is 8 years older than me. He owns a construction supply company, Jessica said calmly, as if she were talking about someone else. We don't have a good relationship. He said I don't know how many mistresses. I've caught him a few times, but it doesn't do any good. The evening breeze suddenly felt cold, and Ethan didn't know what to say. So what's the situation with you two now? He does his thing, and I do mine. That's just how it is. Jessica shrugged, her tone so casual it was almost chilling, as if she were discussing something perfectly normal. But, she said, her tone shifting as she took a step closer to him, I meant it when I said I like you. I'm not just playing around. Ethan took a step back, instinctively putting some distance between them. Jessica, I've really enjoyed spending time with you, but is it too soon? Jessica asked, tilting her head. Ethan didn't say yes or no. He didn't know how to respond. I'm married too. Jessica burst out laughing as if he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Ha ha ha. When she finally calmed down, she asked, so how are things between you two? Ethan knew she already knew the answer to that question. If his relationship was so great, he wouldn't be traveling alone, and he wouldn't be so receptive to her company. When Ethan didn't answer, Jessica asked another question. Do you still love her? That question made Ethan fall silent. Judging by his actions, he certainly didn't love Chloe anymore. Signing the divorce papers, staying away from home, these weren't the actions of a man in love. But the question seemed to tear open a part of himself he didn't want to face. He remembered the day they got their marriage license. Chloe had insisted on wearing her dress uniform for the photo. Ethan had assumed she'd wear a nice dress or a white blouse. That's what most people did. But she had said, I'm wearing this. Today is an important day, and I want it to be special. She had even picked out his tailored suit, insisting that he dress up too. It was one of the few good memories from their short marriage. The rest was just a blur of apologies and arguments. As his parents had said, the problems between him and Chloe were fixable. It wasn't like there had been any infidelity. She really did like him. She just prioritized her job more. If she could have found a way to balance her life and her job, Ethan probably would have spent the rest of his life with her. But Ethan was tired. He was tired of trying to make a hopeless marriage work. You're still thinking about her, aren't you? Jessica asked, sensing his hesitation. Even though things are bad between you. Maybe, Ethan said, his voice so quiet he could barely hear it himself. But it doesn't matter anymore. The airport announcer was calling out flight information. Ethan stood with his luggage at the security gate, saying goodbye to Jessica. He had been on the road for another 3 months, and the past 6 months of travel had left their mark on him. He decided it was time to go back and finally put an end to his marriage. If only we were both single, Jessica said suddenly. Ethan just gave a self-deprecating smile. Life isn't full of what-ifs. Yeah, a missed opportunity is a missed opportunity, Jessica said with a sad smile. Over the past few weeks, her feelings for Ethan had only grown stronger, even though he was still married, and so was she. The announcer called his flight, reminding him it was time to board. Before he left, he hesitated for a second, then spoke. Goodbye. I hope you can find happiness in your life. Jessica laughed again, though it was hard to tell what she found so funny. Was it what he said, or herself, or maybe even him? Is that a curse or a blessing? Ethan didn't give a straight answer. I guess that depends on how you look at it. Well then, I hope you can find happiness in your life, too, Jessica replied softly, a small smile on her face. Her expression was simple, just a quiet sadness about their parting. As he turned and walked toward security, Ethan didn't look back. He knew that some goodbyes didn't require a grand farewell. Just like some marriages could end without much of a reason. The plane landed in the familiar city. Ethan walked out of the airport, got a cab, and gave the driver the address he hadn't been to in 6 months. Ethan paid the driver and got out, hesitating for a moment at the entrance to the complex before walking to the door of the place he couldn't quite call home. He put the key in the lock, turned it gently, and the door opened. To his surprise, the house was spotless, filled with the signs of someone living there. There was a vase of fresh lilies on the coffee table, and sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, creating soft patterns on the floor. The air smelled fresh and clean, not musty like a house that had been empty for a long time. Ethan realized immediately that Chloe was still living here. He had assumed she would have moved back into the department housing or with her parents after he left. Ethan left his suitcase by the door, unopened. He sat on the sofa, looking around the home that had once held so much promise for him. Their wedding photos still hung on the wall, and the clothes and shoes he'd left behind were neatly in their place. In fact, they were even neater than he'd left them. He checked the time. It was 4:32 p.m. Chloe should still be at the station. She usually didn't get home until after 10 at night, if she came home at all. Ethan leaned back on the sofa to rest his eyes. He must have been more tired from the travel than he thought, because he soon drifted off to sleep. The sound of the lock turning in the door woke Ethan. He looked up to see Chloe walking in. Chloe saw him at the same moment. She quickly slipped off her shoes, set down a bag of groceries, and walked over to him. "Ethan, you're back." Ethan stood up and instinctively checked the time. It was only 6:23 p.m. He was surprised to see her home so early. He couldn't remember her ever being home this early. Chloe saw his suitcase by the door, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she acted like a normal, concerned wife. "You must be tired from your trip. Have you eaten? I just bought some groceries. I can make you something." "No, thank you," Ethan interrupted. "I came to talk about the divorce." The smile on Chloe's face froze, but she continued on as if she hadn't heard him. "Let me get you a glass of water. You must be thirsty." "I'm not thirsty. I'm here to talk about the divorce." Chloe acted as if she hadn't heard the word divorce. "Well, let me go turn on the water heater for you. You must want a hot shower after traveling all day." "I said, I'm here to get a divorce," Ethan repeated. Chloe stopped in her tracks, no longer heading for the bathroom. She slowly turned to face him. "I don't want a divorce." "Well, I do. I'm tired of this, Chloe. I can't do it anymore. I can change," Chloe said, her head snapping up, her eyes brimming with tears. "Look, I've been getting off work at 6. I've even started keeping flowers in the house. I've been learning how to cook. I don't want a divorce." Her voice grew quieter until it was just a choked sob, tears streaming down her face and splashing onto the floor. Seeing her cry, Ethan felt a pang of a long-forgotten pain. But mostly, he just felt tired. This marriage had left him with almost no good memories. "Chloe," Ethan said suddenly, "you don't really want to change. You're just afraid of losing me. If I hadn't asked for a divorce, would you have changed?" Those two simple questions made Chloe's breath catch in her throat. The truth was, she had only thought about changing after she saw the divorce papers. But Ethan wasn't finished. "Did we really have to get to the point of divorce for you to realize you needed to change? What's the point of appreciating something only after it's gone?" Chloe bit her lip, saying nothing, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. "If I hadn't asked for a divorce, would things still be the same as they were? Would I have had to just keep enduring our empty marriage?" Ethan continued, each question twisting like a knife in her heart. "No," Chloe cried, tears streaming down her face as she threw her arms around him. "I really know I was wrong. Please, can you just give me one more chance? Just one. Let's stop torturing each other," he said softly. "There's no point in dragging this out. You're not happy, and I'm not happy. Let's just end it." Chloe bit her lip and was silent for a long time before finally letting go of him. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a deep breath, and said, "Okay, I understand. I'll sign the papers." Ethan was surprised by her sudden agreement and didn't know what to say. "Okay, I'll see you at the courthouse tomorrow morning." In the weeks since she and Ethan had finalized the divorce, she hadn't been back to the station once. That afternoon, Chloe had submitted a request for a leave of absence, needing some time off. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Chloe got up from the sofa to answer it. "Dad? Mom? What are you guys doing here?" Her mother took her hand, gently wiping away the tear stains from the corners of her eyes. "Look at the state of you." "Of course we were going to come." "I'm fine, Mom," Chloe said, her voice so hoarse it was almost unrecognizable. Her parents sat down with her on the sofa. "We heard you got divorced, and that you've stopped going to work," her father said, getting straight to the point. "I called your captain yesterday. He said you took a leave of absence." Chloe nodded silently. Her mother gently rubbed her back. "Honey, a divorce isn't the end of the world. You're still young. You have to look forward." Chloe shook her head. "I'm just tired. I want to rest. My whole life has been about school and work. I never stopped to think about what it means to actually live." Her father sighed. "Chloe, you can't keep this up. You're going to make yourself sick." "I know," Chloe said, curling into herself. "I just need a little more time." Her mother started to say something, but her father stopped her with a shake of his head. They sat with their daughter all afternoon, mostly in silence. Before they left, her mother made a simple dinner and tidied up the living room. "Call us if you need anything," her mother said at the door, her eyes filled with worry. Chloe nodded, watching her parents leave. She was alone again in the empty house. The house felt too big, every corner echoing with memories of Ethan. Chloe lay on the sofa, curling into a ball and burying her face in the cushions, silent tears streaming down her face once more. Meanwhile, in a small coastal town 1,000 miles away, Ethan was sitting at an outdoor cafe, staring out at the blue horizon. Since the divorce, he had escaped to this city, a place with no memories of Chloe. His life was simple. He slept until he woke up naturally and took long walks on the beach. He'd grab a casual dinner and sometimes have a drink. There were no expectations and no disappointments. His life was like a stagnant pond, terrifyingly still. Ethan, a familiar female voice called his name from behind. Ethan turned to see Jessica Carter standing nearby. She was wearing a white sundress and a hat, and she looked like she had lost some weight since he'd last seen her. "Fancy meeting you here." Jessica sat down across from him and ordered a latte. "How have you been?" she asked suddenly. Ethan just gave a wry smile. His life wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. "I'm doing okay, I guess. I got divorced," she said, taking a sip of her coffee. "I'm just traveling to clear my head." "You got divorced too?" Ethan asked, surprised. "Yeah, I did," Jessica said with a relieved smile. "I had proof he was cheating, so I got a pretty good settlement. Getting divorced was the best decision I ever made. I haven't felt this free and happy in years." Ethan didn't say anything. His divorce was different from hers. He didn't feel a sense of relief or freedom, just a hollow emptiness he couldn't explain. "So what are your plans now? What do you want to do?" "I'll just keep traveling," Jessica said, looking off into the distance. "There are still so many places I want to see." She suddenly laughed. "You know, it wasn't until after my divorce that I realized how big the world is. I was trapped in that awful marriage for way too long." Ethan nodded, but he couldn't relate. His world hadn't gotten bigger since his divorce. If anything, it had shrunk, leaving him with nothing but memories. Maybe it's true what they say. After a breakup, you don't forget their voice or their face, you forget their flaws. "You're still thinking about her," Jessica stated. It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't deny it, taking a sip of his coffee to avoid answering. "If you can't forget her, you should go find her," Jessica said lightly. Ethan shook his head. "No, it's over. We're divorced. I was the one who asked for it." Jessica stayed in town for 3 days. They ate meals together, took walks, and talked, but they both instinctively avoided the topic of their relationships. On the 4th day, he drove Jessica to the airport. "I'm off to the next city. Thanks for keeping me company." "Don't mention it. We're friends, right?" Ethan said with a small smile. Jessica looked into Ethan's empty eyes and repeated the words he'd said to her last time. "I hope you can find happiness in your life." Ethan was taken aback for a second, then gave a bitter laugh. "Well, I'll take that as a blessing then." As he watched Jessica walk away, Ethan realized that he and she were very much alike. They were both using travel to wash something away. The difference was that Jessica was trying to wash away the scars of a painful marriage, while he was trying to wash away the lingering feelings he still had for Chloe. But it seemed the more he tried, the stronger they became. The red lanterns lining the streets glowed like embers, swaying in the cold wind. With the new year approaching, the city was alive with festive decorations. Chloe was on her way to her parents' house, her arms full of groceries for the holiday. Just then, a couple walked past her. Between them, a little girl of about 4 or 5 skipped happily. The parents held her hands, one on each side, and the 3 of them chatted and laughed as they walked. The little girl held a stick of cotton candy, her cheeks rosy and her face lit up with a happy smile. Chloe found herself slowing down, her eyes following the family of 3. If only, if she had just tried harder with Ethan, would they have a child of their own by now? A child who looked like a mix of the 2 of them. A child who would call her mommy in a sweet little voice and toddle into her arms for a hug. The thought was like a sharp needle, piercing the softest part of her heart. She quickened her pace, trying to escape the heartwarming scene. New Year's Eve dinner at her parents' house felt bland and tasteless. Even though Chloe tried to put on a brave face, watching the New Year's specials, making dumplings, and exchanging pleasantries, her mind was a million miles away. On New Year's Day, she went with her parents to visit some relatives. She mechanically repeated the usual greetings, "Happy New Year, best wishes, good health." On the drive home, Chloe passed by the apartment complex where Ethan's parents lived. She saw the warm, yellow light glowing in their window and couldn't help but wonder how Ethan was doing. When she got home, Chloe just sat on the sofa, lost in thought. She didn't even hear her mother calling her name. Her mother could tell right away that something was on her mind. She had noticed Chloe slowing down as they drove past Ethan's parents' building earlier. She knew her daughter was still thinking about Ethan, but she didn't say anything. You can't force matters of the heart. The next morning, Chloe got up early, but her mother, a creature of habit, was already up. "Are you going out?" her mother asked without looking up. Chloe paused for a second, then said, "Yeah, I'm going to pay a New Year's visit. To his parents' house, I assume," her mother said, cutting straight to the truth. Chloe looked down like a guilty child. "Yes, just to wish them a Happy New Year." To her surprise, her mother didn't object. "Go on then, and wish them a Happy New Year from us, too." Chloe's eyes welled up with grateful tears, and she nodded happily. Okay. When she got to Ethan's parents' front door, Chloe hesitated for a while before finally ringing the bell. After a few moments, no one answered. Chloe tried ringing a couple more times, but there was still no answer. She was about to turn and leave. But just then, the elevator doors opened, and Ethan's parents walked out. They were just getting back from their own New Year's visits. "Chloe," Mrs. Miller was the first to react. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Your father and I would have prepared something." Chloe was stunned. She couldn't believe that even after the divorce, they still treated her like a daughter. She was a little nervous and stammered. I just came to wish you a Happy New Year." Mrs. Miller opened the door and ushered her inside. "Well, come in, come in." Chloe followed them inside. The apartment looked just as she remembered. She took the cup of tea Mrs. Miller offered her and glanced around, wondering where Ethan was. Just then, the door opened, and the person she thought about day and night walked in. Ethan had just parked the car and had taken his time coming up. He looked up, and his eyes met Chloe's. He froze. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Long time no see," Ethan said, breaking the silence as if waking from a dream. His voice was quiet, but it landed on Chloe's heart like a physical blow. Yes, long time no see. So long that she had almost forgotten the pleasant sound of his voice. So long that she thought she had moved on, only to fall apart the moment she saw him again. "You too, long time no see," she managed to reply, her fingers gripping her teacup so tightly she was afraid they would start to shake. Just then, Mrs. Miller came out of the kitchen with a bowl of fruit. Seeing the two of them, she quickly pulled her husband back, not wanting him to ruin the moment. Suddenly, Ethan and Chloe were alone in the living room. An awkward silence hung between them like an invisible wall. Ethan sat down in the armchair. Chloe stared at the ripples in her tea, unable to meet Ethan's eyes. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. She had rehearsed 100 different things to say, but now that she was here, she was too nervous to speak. "How have you been?" she asked, taking a deep breath and finally mustering the courage to look at him. As it turned out, Ethan was looking right at her, and he asked the exact same question at the exact same time. Their eyes met for a brief second before they both quickly looked away. "I'm doing well," Chloe said quickly, then added, "How about you?" "I'm doing well, too," Ethan replied. The silence between them returned. Chloe, once again, mustered her courage to break the silence. "So what are you up to these days?" Ethan asked at the exact same time. They both looked away again. One of them let out a small laugh, and the other one joined in. "You go first," Ethan said, turning to her, his voice as gentle as it had been on their first date. "I'm still a deputy captain in the detective division, but I've been delegating more cases to my colleagues, not trying to do everything myself like I used to." Chloe explained. "What about you? What have you been up to?" Ethan paused for a moment. "I'm still not working, just traveling, seeing other cities, that kind of thing." Chloe nodded, and without thinking, she said, "I know." Ethan looked at her, confused. "Huh? What?" She immediately realized what she'd said, and quickly shook her head. No, I didn't know. I know was something she used to say to him all the time when they were together. She'd always said it in a dismissive tone, whenever he tried to talk to her. "Okay, I know." Ethan just gave a small, awkward smile. "It's okay. Well, now you know." His gentle smile reminded her of how he used to be before they were married. It was that gentleness that had made her want to marry him in the first place. Chloe's face flushed a deep red. She jumped to her feet. I have to go. I have something to do." Ethan stood up too. "I'll walk you out." Chloe waved her hands dismissively. "No, you don't have to." Mrs. Miller, who had been listening from the kitchen, chose that moment to reappear. "Chloe, you're leaving already? Why don't you stay for dinner?" Chloe refused. She couldn't take it anymore. A moment ago, she couldn't even look at him. Now she was too embarrassed to. "Well, at least let Ethan walk you out. It's freezing out there. It's good to have some company." Her words were heavy with meaning, though it was unclear who they were directed at. In the end, Chloe agreed. As the elevator descended, Chloe kept her head tilted, not daring to meet Ethan's eyes. The walk to her car was only a couple hundred feet, but it felt like miles. Chloe didn't say a word the entire way, only speaking once she was in her car. "Goodbye." After the new year, Ethan stayed at his parents' house. He postponed his travel plans indefinitely and started to enjoy the quiet, simple life. Maybe it was from lazing around the house too much. The spring rains had kept him cooped up inside, and his muscles were starting to feel stiff from inactivity. I should get a massage, he said to himself, searching for nearby spas on his phone. Having learned his lesson from the last time, Ethan was extra cautious. He meticulously checked the reviews on every platform before finally settling on a high-end spa with a 4.9-star rating. All the reviews praised the place for being professional, legitimate, and having great service. Ethan followed the GPS to a place called Aqua Haven. This place looks pretty upscale. It must be legitimate, he thought to himself. After choosing his package at the front desk, Ethan made sure to ask, "You don't have any special services here, do you?" The receptionist gave him a strange look before replying in a professional tone. "We do not offer the kind of special services you're referring to, sir." "Good, that's good." Ethan breathed a sigh of relief and went to his room. After changing into a robe, he lay down on the massage table. Soon, there was a knock at the door. A beautiful masseuse in a modest uniform entered. "Hello, sir. I'm Ruby, your technician for today." Her technique was very professional, and Ethan's tense muscles began to relax. Just as he was about to drift off to sleep, he felt a pair of hands at his waistband. "What are you doing?" he asked, sitting up abruptly. The beautiful masseuse batted her eyelashes at him. "Do you prefer it when the girl takes the lead, sir?" As she spoke, she began to unfasten her own uniform. Ethan quickly stopped her. "Stop. I don't want that kind of service." "Don't be shy, sir," the masseuse said, moving closer. "You asked about special services, so the front desk made the arrangements." Just as they were arguing, the door was kicked open. "Police! Vice raid!" Several uniformed officers shouted as they stormed in. History was repeating itself. In the interrogation room at the police station, Ethan sat on a cold chair, answering the officers' questions. Name: Ethan Miller. Age: 27. Occupation: unemployed. The officer questioning him looked up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "You again? Didn't we pick you up last year too?" Ethan was speechless. What were the odds of this happening twice? But just then, the door to the interrogation room opened again, and a familiar figure stood in the doorway. "You can go." The officer looked at Chloe and whispered, "Captain, this is against procedure." Chloe handed him a file. "The evidence and the procedure you need are in here." The officer took the file, glanced at it, and said, "All right, you're free to go." Ethan stood up, completely bewildered, and walked out of the room in a daze. Thank you." Even though Chloe still had her confident, professional air in front of Ethan, she seemed to transform back into a shy young woman. "Don't mention it. It was nothing." Just as Ethan finished signing the paperwork and was about to leave, Chloe called out to him. "Hey, I'm getting off work soon. Would you want to get dinner or something?" Ethan nodded. "Okay." When her shift was over, Chloe changed into a blue turtleneck and a long white skirt. Ethan froze for a second when he saw her. He remembered that outfit. It was what she had worn on their first date. "Let's go," Chloe said quietly. They found a nice restaurant with good food and a great atmosphere and enjoyed their dinner. Since it was still early after dinner, they decided to see a movie that had just come out. It was 10:30 by the time the movie ended, and Chloe turned down Ethan's offer to call a cab. This was the first time they had completed a date without interruption, and she wanted to spend a little more time with him. "Let's walk. It's not far." "Okay." They walked side by side down the empty street, their shadows stretching and shrinking under the streetlights. Their hands brushed against each other several times, but neither of them made a move to hold the others. Suddenly, Chloe, not watching where she was going, tripped on an uneven paving stone and stumbled forward. Ethan reacted quickly, catching her by the waist and steadying her. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking down at her, only to realize how close their faces were. He could feel the warmth of her breath on his skin. Chloe looked up at him, her eyes wide and her lips slightly parted. Then, she slowly closed her eyes. Ethan stared at her lips, so close to his. He hadn't intended for this to happen, but the moment was right. He slowly lowered his head and gently touched his lips to hers. The kiss was light and brief, but her lips were even softer than he remembered. When they pulled apart, Chloe's face was as red as a ripe apple. She snuck a peek at Ethan and saw that he was blushing too. Now it was Ethan's turn to be flustered. "Ethan, can we start over?" "From the beginning, just dating," Chloe said suddenly. Ethan looked at her, so vulnerable and sweet, and thought of the cold, assertive woman he'd met on their first date. The Chloe standing before him now had learned to be vulnerable, to communicate, and to balance her life and her work. Okay, and so, they started dating for real, going out at least once a week. Sometimes they went to fancy restaurants. Other times they'd just grab food from a street vendor. Sometimes they'd see the latest blockbuster, and other times they'd just stay in and watch old movies on the couch. Chloe learned to let him know in advance if she had to work late. And Ethan got into a routine of going to bed and waking up early. On an early summer evening, a gentle breeze drifted through the half-open window of the apartment. An old movie played on the television. Chloe was nestled in Ethan's arms, her cheeks flushed from the wine they'd been drinking. "You've changed," Ethan said suddenly, his fingers gently caressing her shoulder. Chloe looked up at him. "How so?" Ethan smiled, looking into her eyes. "You've become someone I love even more." Chloe pretended to pout. "So you didn't love me before?" Ethan kissed her. "I loved you before, but I love you even more now." Chloe cupped his face in her hands and kissed him back. "You've changed, too. You've become even more gentle." Ethan looked down at her, and this time, Chloe didn't look away. It was hard to say who moved first, but their lips met, first tentatively, then in a deep, passionate kiss. Chloe, as if making a decision, wrapped her arms around Ethan's neck and whispered in his ear, "Take me to bed." Ethan froze for a second, pulling back slightly. "Are you sure?" Chloe nodded gently. "I'm sure. And it's not about making up for what we missed when we were married. It's because I really love you. I love you so much." Ethan took a deep breath, lifted her into his arms, and gently laid her on the bed. Just as things were about to progress, the piercing ring of a cell phone cut through the air. They both froze. Chloe looked at Ethan, then at her phone. "It's okay. You should get it. It might be important." Chloe hesitated for a moment before getting up to answer her phone, stepping away from the bed. "Okay, I understand. I'll be there tomorrow morning." "Okay, that's all. Bye." When she came back to the bed, Ethan looked surprised. "You're not going in?" Chloe shook her head. "It's fine. The suspect confessed. I told my team to get the statement, and I'll handle it in the morning." "So no one is going to interrupt us tonight?" Ethan asked, a hopeful look on his face. Chloe answered his question with a kiss. That night, two souls that had been torn apart were finally reunited. They promised they would never be separated again. A month later, Ethan and Chloe stood at the altar once again. This time, the wedding was much larger than their first, with more guests and a love that was stronger and more secure. At the ceremony, when the officiant asked if they would take each other, for better or for worse, they looked deeply into each other's eyes and, at the same time, said, "I do." After they exchanged rings, Ethan cupped Chloe's face in his hands and gave her a long, passionate kiss, to the cheers and applause of their guests. After the reception, Chloe walked out of the hotel on Ethan's arm. "I took a month off from work. Let's go on a honeymoon," Chloe said. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Halfway through their honeymoon in the Maldives, Chloe was in the bathroom of their beachfront hotel when she suddenly felt sick to her stomach. She retched and coughed. Ethan rushed to her side. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Chloe looked up at Ethan, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. A thought flashed through Ethan's mind. "Really?" Chloe shook her head. "I don't know, but I missed my period this month. Should we go to a doctor and get it checked out?" "Okay." In the ultrasound room at the clinic, the doctor pointed to a tiny dot of light on the screen. "Congratulations, you're going to be parents." Chloe squeezed Ethan's hand tightly. The tiny dot on the screen was so small, but it held all of their love and hope. "Looks like our honeymoon will have to be cut short," Ethan said. "Sorry, looks like the baby is in a hurry to meet its mommy and daddy," Chloe said, rubbing her still flat stomach. "It's okay," Ethan said, taking her hand. "We have the rest of our lives." Epilogue. 3 years later, during the new year, the streets were lined with red lanterns, and festive music played on a loop in the supermarkets. Ethan and Chloe walked slowly down the bustling street, their daughter holding their hands between them. The little girl was 2 years old, with her hair in 2 little pigtails, her cheeks were rosy, and she held a ball of pink cotton candy in her hand.